Inshallah, today we're going to read as much as we can, inshallah, from Surah Al-Baqarah. So, Surah Al-Baqarah begins as a number of surahs. It begins with a mystery, something we do not understand. And it begins with what we call al-huruf al-muqatta'a, which are these letters that seem to have, or apparently to us, have no particular meaning. And it just basically, if you imagine a chapter of a book beginning A, D, Q, like I have no idea what that means. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins Surah Al-Baqarah with Alif Lam Mim. This is not something that is done in Arabic literature. You don't begin a poem, you don't begin a khutbah, you don't begin a sermon. There is no nadhir, there is no kind of precedent in Arabic literature for this kind of thing. It's not a thing that is done. We don't know what it means. And a number of surahs begin with these letters. So it is something that is beyond our knowledge. However, some scholars, while accepting the fact that we don't understand what they are, they've looked at these letters and they noticed that if we look at these huruf al-muqatta'a, if we look at these letters that begin certain surahs, like Yasin, Taha, Alif Lam Mim, etc., we find that they are exactly 14 letters. So there are 14 letters. And we find that in the Arabic, Arabic abjad, it's not really called an alphabet because it's not exactly an alphabet, but the abjad, or the letters of the Arabic language, are 28. So 14 divided by 28 is a half, which is interesting. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has used exactly half of the letters in the alphabet in the beginning of these things. That's number one. Number two, we start to look a bit more and we realize it's not just any half. Every single phonological category of letter is used. So if we look, for example, in tajweed, which is not something unique to Arabic, by the way, right? Tajweed is tajweed existed, for example, in ancient Sanskrit scrolls, when people used to recite ancient Sanskrit and people were changing the way they pronounced it. Right? Certain scholars of ancient Sanskrit, they used to study how you pronounce things, right? So pronunciation is not something unique to Arabic language. Tajweed is not something unique. Obviously, it's a science that became very important to us because we need to learn how to pronounce the sacred text. But phonetics is not something unique to Arabic, right? So when we talk, for example, in Tajweed, we talk about huruf al-hams and jahar. We're talking about unvoiced and voiced letters. When you teach English, if someone's teaching English to somebody, they have to teach them in English, there's voiced letters and unvoiced letters. So there's a P and there's a B. They're the same, but one's voiced and one's unvoiced. There's a K and there's a G. One's voiced and one's unvoiced. So these are categories that they exist in any language. And so we look, for example, we look at the huruf of jahar and the huruf al-hams, for example, voiced and unvoiced. Exactly half of the voiced letters in Arabic are used in the beginning of the surahs. And half of the unvoiced letters are used in the beginning of the surahs. Okay, that's interesting. So half of the letters, half of this category, half of that category. We look at other categories in phonology. Things like what we call in Arabic the huruf al-tabaqiyya, right? Like sad, like ta, right? These heavy letters. We find half of those as well. We look at other things, liquid letters, letters that roll, like l and s, right? That's the quality of a sound. Exactly half of those again. So we don't know what they mean. We don't know what Allah means by Alif Lam Mim. We don't know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala means by Taha. Allahu Alam. But by looking at them, there's a very uncanny and very surprising system, which is that exactly half of the Arabic letter has been used and half of every single phonetic category of letter has been used. And so this tells us two things. Number one, it would be awfully strange if somebody came and invented this Quran over 23 years. That's quite a difficult thing to do, because what you'd have to do is randomly invent this thing that just happens at the beginning of these certain surahs and decide exactly that you're going to have half of every single phonological category of each letter, which is it would make sense. It would make sense like if this was made up by a civilization. This is the key thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stresses many times. If Islam was made up by a civilization, it would make sense, right? Let's take an analogy. The Mormons, right? Our brothers down the road. So Mormonism is created out of Christianity. So the ideas that are in Mormonism, they already exist. The language as it was in English language, as a Bible, etc. And so you're coming from something. So if we had the Islamic civilization with its fiqh and with its aqidah and with its books, etc., and somebody invents something that's not that amazing. But here we have people who are coming from the desert. Majority of them do not read and write. They don't know about phonetic characteristics. They don't know about fiqh. They don't know about this. They don't have a developed civilization. They have good akhlaq, they have character, and they have stories, and they have language, but they're not a civilization as we perceive civilizations. And so for somebody to come along and make up this lie, it's pretty difficult. You'd have to be, it's a very, very difficult thing to do, to structure the Quran in the way that it's been structured with all these different things and pull it off. What makes much more sense is that this is revelation, that the Prophet ﷺ is not a liar, and the Prophet ﷺ was not making up lies, and the Prophet ﷺ didn't invent this, that the people didn't add this to the Quran. We know that he didn't add that to the Quran, right? We know, it's very, very clear. And so these things are miraculous, and this is part of the Quran, and the Quran is indeed miraculous, right? It has a very particular system. The other thing then is, again, we don't know, but perhaps Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us the following. He's saying, here we go. I have 2 keys to 2 houses. And I have a laptop in one, and a laptop in another. You go and develop, Brother Mustafa, you go and develop a program, and I'll develop a program, and we'll see who's better. So Allah gave us half, and he gave us the ability. Here we go. Here's the letters of the Quran. Here's letters of Arabic. You take half and I'll take half. Let's see who can make a better text. So this tahaddi, this challenge comes in the Quran many times. This tahaddi, the challenge to say, if this is not from God, if this is not from Allah, make up your own book. Make up your own book with this, and you can't do it. It's not possible. Right? It's not possible. And how do we know it's not possible? Because the Arabs themselves disproved themselves. So the Arabs were people of eloquence. That was a key thing. Right? If you can understand Arab society at that time, it was basically like gangs, right? Everybody exists in tribes, and the strength of the tribe is through its connections and through its military power and through its oratory, its ability like wolves howl at each other to show each other who's stronger. Similarly, each tribe would have its poet that would praise itself, and this is a defense mechanism. So there's a key thing. It's not just an extra thing that they had in society, poetry. It was a defense mechanism. If you could destroy the other tribe with poetry, you can actually scare them to not attack you. This is a very important thing. So poetry was a huge thing for the Arabs. It was a huge thing. And so it wasn't something that was new to them. It wasn't something that's they're not really into poetry. Poetry is a big thing in Arabic literature before Islam. So if there was a literary challenge, they should have met it. They had all these different poets. The Prophet ﷺ was not known as a poet. He's not from a family of poets. There are people who are from families of poets. Amazing poetry that we still study today and we still teach today. And so they didn't do it. What did they do instead? They fought the Prophet ﷺ. They lost their lives. They lost their money. They lost their religion. They lost every single thing instead of doing that. Right? It's like if I told Muhammad Amin, hey, I bet I can beat you in an arm wrestle. So what does he do? He tries to shoot me. He tries to get somebody else to beat me up. He tries this, he tries that. But he never, ever tried to challenge me in an arm wrestle. What does it mean? It means he can't beat me. And he knows he can't beat me. So the Arabs themselves said, this is not normal. This is not something with the normal realm of human ability. We will try everything else. We'll try and kill him. We'll try and do this. We'll try and do that. But we can't possibly meet this literary challenge. They couldn't do it. The previous generations, the generations after it and after, etc., thereafter, etc., never managed to do it. Until this day, the challenge is still there. to make something like the Quran, right? Make something like the Quran. And it hasn't been met yet. So this is one of the many miracles and the one of the many inimicabilities, if that's a word, of the Quran is these huruf al-muqatta'a, these mysterious letters in the beginning of certain surahs, not all surahs. So it says Alif Lam Mim, and there's much to be said here, but I'm just going to try and skip a lot because we don't have time. It says that, or this is the book. There is no doubt about it, and a guidance for the muttaqeen. So the Dr. Mustafa Khattab in his translation, he will be translating the word taqwa and muttaqeen as people who are mindful of God, right? So mindfulness is something that we talk about today, and it's obviously important. But mindfulness is more like dhikr, right? Right, يذكروا الله قياما وقعودا وعلى جنوبهم. They are mindful of Allah when they are standing and when they're sitting and when they're going to sleep. Be mindful of something, right? That's like dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Taqwa is different, right? Taqwa means to actively protect yourself from something, right? So, it's very important to understand that one of the ways that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has preserved Arabic language is through the literature that's around it. Like the Quran exists in a linguistic milieu to which it can be compared. And this is drastically different to, for example, the Bible. So we don't have poems at the time of David, alayhi salam. You can't go and compare the Psalms of David to other poetry at the time. But we can with the Quran. So, for example, there was a famous poet, Umar ibn Abi Rabi'a, who was known for being a bit of a player, okay, in the bad sense. So he's useful because he uses language that we want to understand. So he said, I spent the night with my girlfriend, may Allah protect us, and I was in a tribe. I was in the qal'a, right? That's the word they use in Afghanistan, right? Qal'a, like. So I'm in a situation where if they find me, they're going to kill me. Okay. So what does he do? Is he says, I left her house, right, dressed as a woman. All right. And he said, and I had beside me, I had my girlfriend and her little sister. So they just thought three women were leaving the house, right? But it was actually me and etc. Right. So he says, فَكَانَ مِجَنِّي دون من كنت أتقي ثلاث شخوص كاعبان ومعصر. So he says my mijan, my shield, دون من كنت أتقي, between me and the person I was trying to protect myself from, because these guys are going to kill me. ثلاث شخوص كاعبان ومعصر. There was three figures, two that were young teenagers, and one that was about to become a teenager, mu'asir. So we don't sit and talk about haram in the masjid, let alone in Ramadan. But the point I'm trying to make is one of the key distinguishing features of Islam is that it exists in a context you can actually understand it. Did you know that when you study the Bible, you have to read Arabic? If you do like a PhD in Bible studies, you're going to have to learn Arabic because they don't actually understand the Bible fully, because they don't have all the words. And Arabic being so close to Hebrew, you can learn things from it, right? Imagine something written in ancient Pashto, and you're trying to understand it. You look perhaps in Farsi, you might find some words that were similar, or in Urdu. Yeah. So the same thing in Hebrew, they don't actually understand half. They're not, I won't say half of it, but there's a lot of things in the biblical Hebrew they don't understand because this is language from not 2,000 years ago, from 3,000 years ago. And they don't have a thing around it. Islam, here's the Quran, you have Arabic around it. So you can exactly understand what is this word. So what does taqwa mean? It says, oh yeah, here's this man who's trying to protect himself from being killed by the family of this girl. And he does ittaqa. Oh, okay. That makes sense. I mean, he's going to ittaqa. Ittaqa means to protect yourself from somebody. Now I understand the Quran. Otherwise, I don't really understand the Quran. And he also did tafsir of Surah Naba for us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions وَأَنزَلْنَا مِنَ الْمُعْصِرَاتِ الْمُعْصِرَاتِ. He just explained to us, he said, a girl that's about to reach puberty is called a mu'sir. So similarly, the clouds, it's like on the brink of reaching puberty, on the brink of of changing into rain. That's called mu'sir in Arabic. So that's the analogy. And then the verse, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions wa kawa'iba atraba. What does kawa'iba atraba means? Kawa'ib is full-breasted maidens. So that's the term, ka'ibani. I wouldn't understand it otherwise if it were not for these things. And so this is how one of these distinguishing features of the Arabic language of the Quran is that Allah preserved it through preserving the Arabic language. And the very first Islamic knowledge to be preserved and codified and reach its maturity was Arabic language. And that's why in our times, the number one target is Arabic language, right? So we had a very significant person, Taha Hussein, from Egypt. He was a huge scholar. And he with other Orientalists and Orientalist mind, he wanted to challenge the whole idea of the existence of Arabic language. He says, just like Christianity, that doesn't understand, nobody speaks Aramaic like Jesus did. Nobody speaks Hebrew like Moses did. Similarly, he said, no, the Arabic didn't exist. They tried to discredit the whole of the existence of Arabic language almost from its original sources, right? He has a key work on that. And so we have to understand that's a key thing that we have, right? That we have is Arabic language, right? And when we study Deen, we study poetry, not just for the Arabic language, but also because it's to understand feelings. So we have an image, right, of Islam, all of us, right? We all have an image of Islam. I think about Islam, I think of an angry Taliban. That's what I think about. That's the image we have in our head, right? Harsh, violent, and uncouth and unsophisticated. It's the opposite. It's the opposite. Well, as one of my teachers said, if you didn't like Shakespeare, you won't understand the Quran. Like, you're not cultured. You won't understand the Quran because the Quran is talking to people who know language. It uses metaphor. It uses, the whole thing is language. Half of it is not talking about halal and haram. Half of it is not even talking about, it's talking about language. Right? And so that high sophisticated culture that produces human beings that have insani, that have humanity. This is what we know about Islam. And the opposite is pictures that we are painted for us that don't reflect us. Right? They don't even reflect us. And in fact, the very opposite is the case. When you look at the ancient ISIS, not the modern ISIS, the ancient ISIS, they were poets. There's a whole genre of poetry. Their poetry was amazing. I mean, they're extremists and they kill people. That's true. But their poetry was amazing. They're very high people with amazing grasp of literature and these things. This is how they were. But the picture that we have for ourselves is we are barbaric, uneducated people. But that's not what history says. That's not what the Deen says. It's the opposite. So it's very important to have that in our mind. And so what is muttaqeen is somebody is trying to hit me and I protect myself. There's a fire and I'm trying to block something off. So there's Allah's punishment and I'm trying to put something between me and it. That's called taqwa, right? Muttaqi, right? So you are trying to avoid Allah's punishment. This is a guidance for you. If you're not trying to avoid Allah's punishment, it's not going to help you. Right. And so I want to give an example of that. I had a friend, Tim, at school. He was in my math class called Tim Helm. So I managed to convince him that God existed. Like, logically, God exists. So what did he say? He said, so what? Like, who cares? Like, it doesn't mean anything to me. I'm not scared of God, nor do I feel any debt to God. I don't want to thank God. I have no debt towards this creature, this thing. I don't care about it. It's just there. It's like, you prove to me that there's a star called Polaris. Okay. What do you want me to do about it? So he doesn't have anything. He doesn't have taqwa. Like, he doesn't understand the augustness of that thing. Doesn't have a relationship with it. So he doesn't care. As opposed to, I care. I fear Allah. Allah is the creator of the universe. I feel a debt towards him, a natural debt towards him. I feel there's a threat here of punishment if I don't listen to him, so I'm scared, right? And Brother Tawheed, who was here last year, he asked this question once. He said, are you trying to say that we're supposed to be continually scared of God? And I said, yeah, it says it quite a lot in the Quran. It comes up again and again and again and again and again, right? And the phrase in the Christian culture is, put the fear of God in him, right? When you discipline your children, is put the fear of God in him, right? Like, fear of God is a key concept in the Bible, in the Quran. And when we lack it, We don't have taqwa. We don't fear God, and we don't have this thing that I'm scared that I'm going to be punished and I need to do something, then we fall into major problems. So this is a guidance for people who are actively trying to change and actively trying to put a barrier between themselves and Allah's punishment. Who believe in the unseen, establish the prayer. What does that mean? To establish a prayer does not mean to pray. It means that the thing is stable, right? It's a very good translation. Aqamahu means to make it stand up. So it's done properly, it's done on time, and it's done in a group prayer when possible, right? So when you're at home and each person prays by themselves, you prayed, but you didn't do iqama salah. When you pray, but you're not focused, you prayed, but that's not called iqama salah, right? When you pray and you don't do things, the ritual is not done properly, it's not called iqamat salah, right? So when we have iqamat salah, what does it mean? It means you pray properly, regularly, and it's happening, as opposed to it happens now and then, as opposed to it's not done properly. It's not a thing in our family, right? So that whole concept that should be a thing in our family done as best as possible. And they donate from that which we have provided for them, those who believe in what has been revealed to you and to what has been revealed before you, and have sure faith in the hereafter. It is they who are truly guided by their Lord, and it is they who will be successful, right? So the phrase in Arabic, أُولَٰئِكَ عَلَىٰ هُدًى مِّن رَبِّهِمْ, those are on an unfathomable guidance from their cherishing Lord. I mentioned yesterday the word Rabb doesn't mean Lord as in somebody who's above you, right? To lord over somebody means to like show your dominance over them, right? It doesn't mean that. Rather, it means that they have they are on and fully established. These people who regularly pray and they believe in the unseen and they believe in the previous scriptures and they believe in the scripture and they're actively trying to ward off the punishment. They are on an unfathomable, undescribably amazing guidance from their cherishing Lord, and they alone will be the successful, right? And it is they, so that's how he phrases it, it is they who will be the successful people, not others, right? That's the implicit message, not others. So there will be a day where we all are resurrected, and there'll be a lot of people who have totally messed up, and there's no way that they can ever repair it. And they will be in hellfire forever, and they will never, ever, ever be happy. And so we don't want to be of that category. We want to be the category of the people who either go straight to paradise, inshallah, or at least that's where our ultimate destination is, as opposed to somebody for whom there's no hope whatsoever. May Allah protect us. So upshot is, if we're not scared, you should be scared. Basically, if you're not scared of Allah and you're not worried, then you should be, that means you're in a pretty bad situation. May Allah protect us. Then Allah shifts to the other side. As for those who persist in disbelief, it is same whether you warn them or you do not, they will never believe. So key thing when we do give da'wah, so Dr. Mustafa Khattab, he came here, the author of this book, translator, he came here last week and he gave a talk on da'wah. And he said, listen, he gave a few points on da'wah. Da'wah is not that complex. You don't need to have a PhD. It's not that complex. But just be aware that not everybody will be guided. So you can explain something to somebody in amazing terms and make it really, really clear, and they have this example and that example, and they still don't understand. They still don't accept it. So Abu Talib, for example, he had his nephew, he saw the picture, he understood every single thing, doesn't become Muslim. So you're like, oh, the problem is this, the problem is that. No, it's just, there are some people, they're just stubborn, that's how they are, right? That's just how they are. So whether you warn them, you don't warn them the same, you still have to warn them. You still have to convey the message, but they don't want to listen. Allah has sealed their hearts and their hearing and their sight is covered, and they will suffer a tremendous punishment. And there are some who say, we believe in Allah and the last day, yet they are not true believers in any sense of the word. They seek to deceive Allah and the believers, yet they only deceive themselves, but they fail to perceive it. There is sickness, or there is a tremendous sickness in their hearts, and Allah only lets their sickness increase. they will suffer a painful punishment for their lies. When they are told, do not spread corruption on the earth, don't mess things up, they say, no, 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 we're the good guys, right? So this is the self-deceit that people have is, no, I'm just being nice. I'm the good guy here, right? And this is the case for many people, is they don't realize that that's what they're doing. They're actually messing things up for other people. And they're told, just be good. And so, I am being good, right? Someone like Freud, for example, is saying, listen, like I've worked with people with psychological problems. I've realized that God is one of these many psychological problems that actually harms people. So if we can convince people that God doesn't exist, people will be happier. Right? That's what he was saying. He's saying God is just it's a psychological problem. Like people believe in God because they're traumatized, right? Just like somebody believing that the wall is going to attack them, right? You think there's some kind of creator out there. So he was saying, I'm trying to help people. I'm a doctor and I'm trying to help people, right? And there's all these other problems that I'm trying to help people, but right, in reality, he's not a Muslim. He's not somebody who's helping. Belief in God is something of tremendous benefit and it's something obvious, right? And so he sees himself as a Muslim, somebody who's helping people. In reality, he's a mufsid, right? We just did, for example, with the kids, some of the kids, we did the play Julius Caesar, right? And Julius Caesar, there's the emperor, and he's powerful, and there's some people who have envy and they just want to kill him. And there's one of his friends who really likes him, but he says, man, if Julius Caesar becomes like the absolute power, that would be really bad for Rome, and it would be, so we have to kill him. So there's a good guy who does something bad for a good reason. He's a good guy, but he's convinced by other people that it's good to murder somebody. And he's in this problem. So this is what many people do. They do a good person, you have good intentions, but you do something bad for a good reason, right? So, for example, wouldn't it be better for the Saudi Arabia if, Arabia at the time of the Prophet just to accept shirk because, it keeps people together, right? So many of us will have this rhetoric, for the sake of unity, let's do the haram. For the sake of unity, let's do this, right? To not make things awkward, let's just pray when I get home, right? So the logic is things like, oh, that would be awkward. In reality, you're harming people when you don't pray. Now, I remember, it's my situation. I remember praying privately at school, right? I had this little place. There was a priest there. He let me use a little room in his little priest office. I was like, man, if I just prayed publicly, how many people would become Muslim? Right? And some kid at school might be, my age now, be like, hey, I thought you were Muslim, but I never saw you pray. I said, yeah, I made wudu. I used to go and pray, but I used to pray in a room, right? It's like, if so you did something okay, but you could have done something better. You could have helped people. So doing the deen is always helpful, and doing what Allah wants us to do is always helpful to everybody. And the opposite is always harmful, right? But they twist things. So they label that which is good as bad, right? Indeed, it is they who are the corrupters. They're messing things up, but they fail to perceive it. And when they are told, believe as others believe, they say, will we believe as the fools believe? Right? So this is a recurrent theme in the Quran. Only uneducated, poor people believe in God and believe in religion. That's the case in Pakistan, right? Religious people are uneducated and poor, right? I was in the time of Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam. Give me a break. You're building a ship in the middle of nowhere. Right? Come on, Dad. Just wake up a bit. You're uneducated, right? I was told in high school, I was told in high school by my sociology teacher. He said, statistically, the more you study, the less religious you are. Right? There's a system. Right? What he means is the more indoctrinated you are, the more you get indoctrinated, which is obviously kind of stupid thing to say. I had another sociology teacher in Jordan, and she said, yeah, just like religion's made up, right? She said the only reason why you're dressed like this and you're religious is because you don't have a PhD yet. Like when you get your PhD, you'll understand, right? So this is this pride that people have. In reality, it's not the case at all. Like it's very simple logic, right? Simple logic behind religion is not very complex at all. But there's a continual pride issue that the only reason you believe in God is because you're a fool, right? If you were half educated, you would leave the deen, right? Take that hijab off and dress like a normal person, right? And so this is the theme that comes again and again and again. What, are we going to believe like idiots believe? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, yeah, but you're the idiots. You're the fools. Right? But they don't see it. And when they meet the believers, they lie to them. They say, we believe. But when they are alone with their evil associates, with their shayateen, they say, we are definitely with you. We were only mocking. Allah will throw their mockery back at them, leaving them to continue wandering blindly in their defiance. They are the ones who trade guidance for misguidance. But this trade is profitless, and they are not rightly guided. Right? So here the translation should be, فَمَا رَبِحَتْ تِجَارَتُهُمْ. Their trade was profitless. So Allah shifts to the future. It's now Judgment Day. Allah's going to do this time and time again, shifting from time and place. We are now on Judgment Day, and we're looking back to your life. فَمَا رَبِحَتْ تِجَارَتُهُمْ. That exchange, the opportunity cost was not worth it. Right? Every single moment of our life, we're playing with opportunity costs. You did A at the cost of B. That's what you do. A at the cost of B. You bought a phone at the cost of the cash. Right? You stole the phone at the cost of doing a sin. Right? You picked up the phone to so and so at the cost of not speaking to so and so. Every single moment. So they made a choice between faith and kufr, and they chose disbelief over faith, and that didn't help them back then. They didn't make them any profit in this life, and here they are on Judgment Day lost. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا كَانُوا مُهْتَدِينَ. But they weren't guidance receivers to begin with. So Allah doesn't say mahtadaw. They didn't receive guidance. They didn't take on guidance. It says they weren't even in that category to begin with. They weren't even in that category to begin with. There's something inside them where they just don't want to listen. Right? That's the category of them. So it says they are not rightly guided, it should say. They were not even in the category of receiving guidance to begin with. Their example is that of someone who kindles a fire, but when it lights up all around them, Allah takes away their light, leaving them in complete darkness, unable to see. So they are willfully deaf, dumb, and blind. So it's an important key thing to understand. If you are literally deaf, dumb, and blind, are you responsible? No. If you are literally insane, you're not responsible, right? If you're literally a psychopath, right, and you think the whole world is aliens, and you go around killing people because you think the whole world is aliens invading Earth, you're not responsible. But these people are willfully stubborn and willfully blind and willfully deaf, right? They intentionally hide things. So a key thing to understand is that, number one, Allah doesn't ask us to do things that we can't do. It doesn't ask us to believe when we can't believe. But we do a lot of, we lie to ourselves a lot. Right? You look at your past, for example, and you're like, oh, it's okay. But actually, if you went back, it's not okay. You look back at your life and say, I'm a nice person. You ask the people around you, like, you're not actually a nice person. Right? You say, I do my job very well. You go and ask your boss, it's like, well, actually, we're about to fire you because you don't do your job properly. So we have our own version of ourselves. It's not a true version that we paint for ourselves. And we keep painting it again and again and again. And it makes life bearable. And it makes not changing doable. Right? Like when this gangster, for example, who's destroyed families, destroyed civil, and then he goes to this nightclub and he owns that nightclub and everyone respects him. It all makes sense to him to paint the reality that I'm cool and I'm respected, I'm revered. But actually, if you go to the every single point of his life, it's all really bad. He's not a nice person. He doesn't actually have any qualities in his life. He's horrible. Right? So that's the same thing with the kafir. The kafir paints up a reality that, well, this isn't known and that's not known and this isn't clear and that's not clear. And it makes it bearable to survive, makes it morally bearable to survive, right? But in reality, he's actually a really bad person, right? So he's willfully deaf, dumb, and blind. So they will never return to the right path. Another example is those caught another example is some people caught in a rainstorm from the sky with darkness, thunder, and lightning. So we have to understand what is the imagery for Arabs of rain. It is huge potential good. right? So when there's rain, that's a huge thing for them, right? So for us in England, it's like, oh my God, it's raining again. I don't know what it's like in California. Why does it always rain on me? It's a bad image, right? Rain is a bad image for us living in a place where there's rain. But if you live in a place where there's no rain, rain is a huge blessing. So the sound of thunder is something good. It's not something scary. It's something that means there is now hope that there will be crops, that we'll be able to take our flocks out to graze, etc. And there is a future, there is a year that's coming to a year of flourishing, etc. So it's something that is good. But what happens if the good comes to them? They only know the bad. So it says, they are those caught in a rainstorm from the sky with darkness, thunder, and lightning. They press their fingers into their ears at the sound of every thunderclap for fear of death. And Allah encompasses the disbelievers. Right? Key concept. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this, that He is with us. We mentioned yesterday the idea that Allah is the cause of every single thing in our lives. That every single thing is being caused by it. So the concept that, oh, the disbelievers are just doing what they want to do. Allah just gave them rain. No, Allah doesn't give anybody rain. The person who is harming you is Allah's pawn. He's in Allah's hand. Nobody is outside of control of Allah. Right? Nobody can frustrate Allah's plan. It's not possible. Right? They press their fingers into their ears at the sound of every thunderclap for fear of death, and Allah encompasses the disbelievers by His might. It is as if the lightning were about to snatch away their sight. Whenever lightning strikes, they walk into its light. So they see some good things in religion. Revelation comes with some good things. They walk into some of it. But for them, it's just all too confusing and all too weird. And they can't see the big picture. The big picture is this rain happening. This is a huge thing. But you don't see the rain. They don't see the good. They just see the bad. Right? Like somebody who asked, oh, what direction was so-and-so praying? He said, oh, his behind was in that direction. So you would normally say he's facing that direction, but he said his behind is in that direction. You just look at it as the opposite, right? You see it as the opposite. It's like somebody coming and saying, why can't my child who is 10 have the right to change his own gender? Why are you stopping him from being free? I mean, you're asking why I, the parent, am not looking after him, right? You see how it's inverted, right? So you see it as like, oh, why the rules? We explained yesterday there aren't rules. Allah's just helping you, right? Like here's a cliff, and the cliff goes like this and like this. So when you walk over here, walk over here. I just don't want you to fall off the cliff. And you're like, oh, why is Islam so restricting? Right? Allah doesn't benefit. So they conceive of Allah as this horrible thing out there, or religion is this horrible controlling thing, or just like a bunch of rules. It's like, no, it's just, you just want you to be happy. That's all. You just want you to be a happy person. So they don't see the big picture. They just see the little things and they see it in a negative light. Everything's seen in a negative light. And we as Muslims, we do that as well, right? It's called cynicism, right? We see everything as cynical. We're cynical about everything. So the kafir is the ultimate, has the ultimate cynicism, like everything. There's no meaning to universe. There's no meaning in anything. Everything's bad. Religion is made up. It's only there to make money. Da, 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 da. But we as well, we look at things like that as well. We just see the bad and don't see the good. Whenever lightning strikes, they walk in its light, and when darkness covers them, they stand still. Had Allah willed, He could have taken away their hearing and their sight. Surely Allah is the most capable of everything. O humanity, worship your Lord who has created you and those before you, so that you might have taqwa. Worship Him that you might actively ward off His punishment. He is the one who has made the earth a place of settlement for you, and the sky a canopy, and sends down rain from the sky, causing fruits to grow as provision for you. So do not knowingly set up equals in worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you are in doubt about what we have revealed to our slave, so Allah is saying, what does it mean? Our slave. It means Prophet Muhammad is only doing what we are telling him to do. And Prophet Muhammad is our slave, so don't mess with him. So in the American experiment of slavery, a slave is dirt, right? If you kill my slave, you're just taking money from me. It's not a big deal. In the Bible and in the Quran, a slave is part of my family. If he does something shameful, that's a shame to my family. And if you harm him, you are harming my family. So that's the rhetoric, right? We are the slaves of Allah. And when we do something wrong to ourselves, we're wronging the tribe. right? And that we are part of Allah's tribe, metaphorically. Allah is not our dad, of course, but that you're part of Allah's tribe. So when you're messing with Allah's slave, you're messing with Allah, right? He's only doing what I'm telling, and don't challenge him. We have revealed to our servant, then produce a surah like it and call your helpers other than Allah if what you say is true. Find somebody to come up with your own Quran. But if you are unable to do so, and you will be never able to do so, then fear. It doesn't say fear, it says actively ward off. The same word, taqwa. Push off the fire that is fueled with what? People and stones, which is prepared for the disbelievers. And at the same time, if you can't do that, so one of the problems with reading the Quran from a book is pagination, right? So here, in my mind, for example, in Baqara, what we just read is at the bottom of a page, right? That's for maybe the last, 30 years because of the Saudi Mus'haf. This part is at the bottom of a page, and then it starts at the top of the page again. So in my mind, it's two different topics. Is that true? It's not two different topics. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if you cannot write a book like the Quran, then two things: fear the hellfire, ward off the hellfire, and two, give glad tidings to the believers. Right? Well, and it says, give good news, O Prophet, to those who believe and do good, that they will have gardens underneath which rivers flow. Right? And so again, this key concept of water. This comes up again and again and again. So again, we are living in, the Bay Area. I think it has the most tributaries in the world and all that. Like we live in a basin, right, where there's just lots of water. It rains, etc. I'm from, where I'm from England, it's flooding all the time. When you talk about water, it's not an amazing thing. Number one, England's an island, so you're always a few hours from the coast, and there's always raining, and there's always rivers everywhere. But we're talking to the people who are in the desert. And people, for water is life, and there is no life without water. Ancient Babylon, what used to happen to ancient Babylon? Ancient Babylon, the beginning of civilization, they would build cities. But ancient Iraq, ancient Mesopotamia is very flat. So what would happen is something up in the mountains of Turkey or in Kurdistan, something would change, and suddenly this city that has been thriving for hundreds of years, and it has a history and has been war with that country, this city and that city, and it has their gods and has this and this and this. Suddenly the river would change, and that place would now become in the middle of the desert. So now you can go to Mesopotamia or Iraq, and you see these cities that are 5,000 years old, 4,000 years old, 3,000 years old in the middle of the desert. And what destroyed them? Water. So this is a key thing. Like access to water is a huge thing. Right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala frequently mentions this thing about water. And so God, underneath which rivers flow. Whenever provided with fruit, they will say, this is what we were given before. They will be served fruit that looks similar but tastes different. They will have pure spouses, and they will be there forever. Surely Allah does not shy away from using the parable of anything at all. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about anything. Whether it's a mosquito or anything else. He gives examples of this, or gives example of that. As for the believers, okay, are you a cynic or not? The cynic is like, what is this? What are you talking about? The person who has a pure heart, it's easy for them. As for the believers, they know that it is the truth from their Lord. As for the disbelievers, they say, why is Allah talking about this? What's this got to do with anything? Through this test, he leaves many to stray, or he sends many to stray. So he translates it as leaves many to stray. When you say leave somebody to stray, it gives a sense that Allah is letting them choose. In reality, who's choosing? Allah is choosing. So we experience things as I'm doing good and I'm doing bad, right? Right now, I don't feel forced to fast, right? But if I broke my fast, I also wouldn't feel forced to break my fast, right? But ultimately, it's in Allah's hands. So that's why I say, oh, Allah, help me fast, because I can't do it. So the word is يُضِلُّ بِهِ كَثِيرًا. He sends astray, not he leaves to stray. There's a slight difference, right? And he leaves many to stray and guides many to stray. And Allah stresses this in other verses of the Quran, that in the past, people went astray, not because of lack of knowledge, but when knowledge came. It was the time when things were clear to them. That's when they actively, intentionally said, no. So there's people who go astray because we don't know. I don't know what to do. But what is Allah talking about? Is scenarios where it's crystal clear, and that's when they say no. Right? Allah quotes the children of Israel, Sami'na wa asayna. We hear and we disobey. We know exactly what we're asking to do, but we're not going to do it. Right? So this is a recurrent theme, and that's the problem that gets us. So many people that come like, Sheikh, I'm worried about this, Sheikh, I'm worried about that. You should worry about the things you already know about, not the things you don't know about. Like what gets us is the things we know about, not the things that we don't know about. Right? Some technicality here, some technical. I didn't know about that technicality. Never heard of it. But the problem is, it's not that acting upon, it's not that we don't act upon things that we don't know, is that we don't act upon the things that we do know. We all know that it was haram, but we stubbornly do it anyway. We know we should be doing this, but we stubbornly do the opposite. He leaves many to stray and he guides many astray, and he leaves none to stray except the rebellious, those who violate Allah's covenant after he's been affirmed, break the ties that Allah has ordered to be maintained, and spread corruption in the land. It is they who are the true losers. How can you deny Allah when you were lifeless and he gave you life? Then he will cause you to die and again bring you to life, and then to him you will all be returned. He is the one who created every single thing in the heavens and the earth, on earth for you. He then turned to the sky, forming it into 7 heavens, and he has perfect knowledge of all things. So we don't know what this 7 heavens means, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions about it, the 7 heavens. We don't know exactly what it means. In Surah Al-Mulk, for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that we bedizened, we made pretty the lowest heaven with the stars. So it's possible that the universe that we can see is the first heaven. And then there's something beyond that. Similarly in the Isra and Mi'raj, the Prophet ﷺ goes to the lowest heaven and he can only go through something with Sayyidina Jibreel. So if it were the universe that we could just see, I mean, obviously none of us have traveled to the end of the universe, but as far as we know, we can't see any barriers, right? We don't know these things. So Allah, we don't know what this means, but it's quite possible that the Sama' dunya, the lower heaven, is what we can see of the universe, right? Allahu A'lam. And he has perfect knowledge of all things. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes on to the story of Sayyidina Adam. And he says, remember when your Lord, your cherishing Lord, said to the angels, I am going to place a successive human authority on earth. And they asked, will you place in it someone who will spread corruption there and shed blood while we glorify your praises and proclaim your holiness? And so what's the context for this? Why would the angels say that to God? He says, I'm going to put somebody on earth, right? I'm going to put somebody on earth who will follow on from each other. Why did they say, oh Allah, why would you put somebody on earth who will kill? Because who was on earth before us? The jinn kind. And so it's not well established. It's in a weak hadith. The weak hadith says that before us, the jinn were here, and they did a lot of bad things, and that they were destroyed. Only apart from some of them were sent to other places. And so what does that mean? That means the context in the minds of the angels is we've already seen people who have free will. We who do not have free will, we praise you day and night, we worship you, we do beautiful things. People with free will do bad things. Right? Look at them. That's what we already did. We already had to punish these people. Right? And some stories, again, just stories, they mentioned that, for example, Iblis, Shaitan, he was one of these jinn who was sent to destroy the bad jinn and destroy these people. Right? Allahu Akbar, we don't know exactly, but there's a context there. Similarly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what does he do? He says, I am going to put somebody on earth, but then he puts him in paradise. What does that mean? It means I know where he's going to turn up. That there is a sir, there's a secret, there's a reason for what's going to happen. Right? And so there's going to be a particular way that things are going to work out. So we have to understand that every single one of us, our life is like Sayyidina Adam. We don't plan what's going to happen tomorrow, but there's a particular wisdom in what's happening tomorrow. Right? How on earth did I turn up in California? Right? If you asked me 20 years ago, I was like, Don't like English people, with all due respect to Americans, fun of me. We don't like Americans. But nobody likes Americans, right? Right. So why would I come to California of all places, right? Every single thing has a sir. There's a particular reason I'm here and you're here, and these things. Every single thing has a wisdom, right? Every single thing comes together. Particular connections. So we're not. It's not our job to. It's our job to respond to situations as Allah wants us to. Our job is not to is to plan the future. That's not our job. We don't know which country you're going to be in. You don't know what you're going to be doing. You don't know what language you're going to be speaking. Who knows what you're going to be doing? Right? And so he says, so here we are glorifying your praises and proclaiming your holiness. Allah responded, saying, I know what you do not know. So this is a key concept, key learning thing. When we do sujood, what are we doing? We put a head on the floor. There's things I know, there's things I don't know. And there's somebody who knows more than me. And we're going to see somebody who worshipped for a long time and messed up. He said, and he taught Adam the names of all things. And then he presented them to the angels and said, excuse me, tell me the names of these things, if indeed you speak the truth. And they replied, glory be to you. We have no knowledge except what you have taught us. You are truly the all-knowing, the all-wise. And Allah said, O Adam, inform them of their names. Then when Adam did, Allah said, did I not tell you that I know the secrets of the heavens and the earth, and I know what you reveal and what you do not reveal? And remember when we said to the angels, prostrate to Adam, do sujood to Adam. So they all did, but not Iblis, who was of the jinn, and he was such a righteous person that he was among the angels, who refused and arrogantly became unfaithful. And so one of the scholars, he said, if I knew a single square foot on earth where Iblis did not worship Allah, I would go there. Meaning, Iblis did so much worship. He worshipped Allah in Alaska, in Tibet, on the North Pole, in the South Pole, in the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, he worshipped Allah in every single place. He did so much worship, but he had an arrogance problem. So it's not about how much good deeds you did. It's about how humble you are. He said, if I knew a single place on earth where Iblis didn't worship Allah, I would go there. But that doesn't exist, right? So many people think, oh, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this. You have an arrogance problem. So it's not about what you did do, it's about how are you here, right? And this is what we see. We see somebody made out of mud who has not been worshipping Allah for 50,000 years or 100,000 years. And somebody who's been worshipping Allah for 100,000 years and done this and done this and done this, and me, but you have an arrogance problem. When you're told to do something, you don't listen. You're like, it doesn't make sense to me. Why would I do it? Why would I, who is a jinn, prostrate to something that was made out of mud? It doesn't make any sense to me. I'm not going to do it. So this is a recurrent theme. Muslims do that all the time. Why would I do that? It doesn't make sense. Why would I do that? That doesn't make sense, right? The scholar says, yeah, but this halal, this haram. Oh, but they're the same. It doesn't make sense to me. Okay, it doesn't make sense to you, but you don't count because you're a slave of Allah. Remember, and that's what we love. Right? We'll find a good place to pause. And then he says, and we cautioned Adam, saying, live you with your wife in paradise and eat as freely as you please, and do not approach this tree, or else you'll be the wrongdoers. But Satan deceived them, the two of them, not Eve. So in the Bible, it's Eve that is bad, and women are bad, right? And this is part of the somewhat in the Bible, but more of the effect of the West on Christianity. In ancient Rome and ancient Greece, right, women are considered dirt, right? Aristotle, he said that like a woman is like a defective man, right? That's why in Rome and Greece, homosexuality was something that's important because women are just there for procreation. Women are not something that are worth something. Men are beautiful, women are not. So this whole idea, what we see in the Bible. And not just in the Bible, but the way it's been understood for the last 1,000 years or more in the West comes from this negative way of looking at women, right? That it's Eve's fault. Eve's a bad person. She's the one that we did it, right? Rather, it's the two of them were tricked, and the two of them did the wrong thing. So they are a team. But Satan deceived them, leading to their fall. from the blissful state they were in. And he said, descend from the heavens to earth as enemies to another, and you will find on earth a residence and a provision for your appointed time. Then Adam was inspired with words of prayer by his Lord, and he accepted his repentance. Surely he is acceptor of repentance. So in the Bible, our forefather Adam was a sinful person. Our grandmother Eve is a bad woman. We inherit that sin, right? This is, again, not really in the Bible, but it's a Christian idea of certain Christians, is we inherit the sin. This is called the Adam's apple. So when you become sexually mature and you start to have evil, bad thoughts about the opposite sex, you're now a bad person. You were born from sin and you inherit that sin. And you can only be saved by believing in Jesus, who is free from sin, because he was not born from sin. He was not born through a husband and a wife. That's how they see things. For us, our forefather taught us, what do you do when you fall? Just like your granddad, he said, Sonny, I'm going to teach you how to fix a tire. Perfect opportunity. It's raining and we're on the floor, and here we go. This is how you fix a tire. So our grandfather, Sayyidina Adam, he taught us, what do you do when you make a mistake? You make tawbah. So it's not the original sin, it is the original repentance. And there's a wisdom in this. You're now in prison. You're now in this situation. You now have a child from zina. You have this. You now have debts that have accrued. There's a wisdom in every single thing. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. You make tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah forgives you. You don't inherit a sin from your dad. You make a mistake, and the mistake is not bigger than Allah. You just say sorry to Allah, and that's it. So we don't believe in the original sin. We believe in the original repentance. And we thank Sayyidina, our grandfather, Sayyidina Adam, for making a small mistake and bringing us here for a particular reason. Right? We're in this, there's a wisdom and there's a brahma and there's a mercy in every single situation, as opposed to, oh my God, somebody messed up and there's no way to fix it. And there's no way I can fix it and I'm a bad person. Right? That's the mentality that many civilizations and certain Christians have. That's not how we see things. We see things in a very good reason. There's a good reason why the bad happened. And there's a good reason for what you're going through right now. Inshallah, we'll stop there. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم سبحان الله وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك.